My name is Derek Robertson. I'm from Education Scotland, and I developed an interest in games in the 1990s, the mid-1990s, games for learning, when I was a primary school teacher in a housing scheme called Whitfield in Dundee. Way back in the mid-90s, it was the last day of term at Christmas, and the kids get to bring in their toys. You remember, did you get to do that, bring in your toys? So the usual suspects were brought in, so Buckaroo was there, and Kerplunk, and Mousetrap was brought in as well, and I used to play all these games with the kids, and somebody brought in this, a Super Nintendo, and they said, "Mr. Robertson, can we put this on, please?" And I said, well, what is it? "It's a Super Nintendo, we need the television." So I went and asked the deputy head teacher, and he agreed, and so we wheeled in the beast. Remember the big ITT television? We wheeled that in, right? And we hooked this up. And what happened was a kind of a serendipitous moment that led me on my career path, which I had no idea was, because I wasn't a gamer. I wasn't aware of the digital worlds that these young people were inhabiting. And up on the screen appeared this game that involved the manipulation of a range of 2D shapes that were falling into patterns and sequences, and it was getting faster and noisier. And I was watching this and trying to make sense of it. And these two were just persevering. They were exhibiting all the problem-solving skills that Maths 5 to 14 was asking for at the time. But the interesting thing was that these two characters in my class, can you guess which maths group they were in? They were in my Cones group, right? They were in the lower ability group. And when it came to problem solving in the Heinemann context and what teachers do, the way we've been socialized to teach, they were hopeless. And I had thought that they weren't very clever. You know, I'd fallen into that kind of hole that maybe teachers can, that it wasn't them, sorry, it wasn't us, it was them. You know, they couldn't really handle this stuff. And so all that kind of hierarchy of levels that we give kids with textbooks and gradings and groupings, etc. in schools, it blew my mind, to tell you the truth, because I was a wee bit embarrassed. I thought, how is it they're so able in this context, but not able in the context which I think is the one that's important? So from that moment, I developed an interest in games. And I started bringing in Ian Livingston's books. I went to the Wellgate Library in Dundee, and I took out all my 15 books, and it was like every book that they had on Ian Livingston's fighting fantasy books, put them on the book table, kids devoured them. And then I introduced the idea of teaching them HTML and building the school website, and we created the Dungeon of Doom. So we did an Ian Livingston-style book online, but the focus was on writing, folks. It wasn't about, I was teaching them HTML and teaching them about how to manage folders and images, but my focus was on writing. So I'd used that to drive creative writing, looking at performance aspects of it, compositional aspects of writing, so the kids knew that an audience all over the world could read their writing in the Dungeon of Doom. And so I got great response. So from that moment, games for me was a really interesting thing, and it kind of influenced where I was going. So I ended up as a staff tutor in Dundee, and then I ended up working with Laurie O'Donnell at Learning and Teaching Scotland as the National Development Officer for Game-Based Learning. So that's how I've come to speak to you here. So here we are. So I thought we'd start off with this idea about testing how well you know our kids, right? The worlds that they inhabit. Let's play Guess the Moshi Monster. Right? So don't be shy. Who's this? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dearie me. Call yourselves gamers, right? Okay, that's DJ Quack, right? Who's this? Right, okay, that's Bernie, Ramsey Nesbitt's son, if you remember him from Glasgow. Okay then, so there you are, right? Okay, so I'm asking you, how well do you know the digital worlds that young learners inhabit? It's a serious point. You know, they don't come to school from a vacuum. You know, they come to school from a world of digital content, cultural content, that really resonates with them. And my argument over the years with the games that I've been pushing into schools is that we should be using these games that weren't built for education, games that were built for entertainment, but that are eminently educational and challenging. Next one for you then. You'll know who this is. Oops, where is he? No, that's Hansel. If you play Moshi Monsters and you're a kid and you get Hansel, boy, have you got the rarest Moshi Monster, and he's the one that they really want. Who's that then? Hooray! He's got one of them, right? Notch, I'll come to Minecraft later. So I'm asking, can a greater understanding of these worlds help inform our developing practice in terms of looking at teaching and learning contexts? You look at the learning spaces young people are inhabiting, look at worlds like Little Big Planet, right? It's absolutely incredible, the amount of user-generated levels that are there. 7 million user-generated levels. And you look at the complexity and the artistry and the demand and the challenge that young people place on themselves when they go into these worlds. It is absolutely phenomenal, and it really, really tears a strip off what we expect of kids in schools. You look at what they do independent of adult intervention in these digital worlds, how badly we underestimate what young learners can do. Also, you look at Minecraft. I mean, there we are, the Eiffel Tower, right? My daughters are on Minecraft at the minute. They're 9 and 10. Their friends come down from the street. There's about 8 of them on the settee all playing Minecraft. Amy was on the computer looking at YouTube, looking at the tutorial how to build a toilet that flushes. She was given the instructions back to my older daughter, Lucy, and she was building it. And they've built this incredibly complex glass and gold house that has flushing toilets in every room now. They're going to have to employ a cleaner. But anyway, right. So, let's talk about this then. What do? I had a space called the Consolarium. I don't know if any of you have heard of this, right? It was the Scottish Centre for Games and Learning. We were a bit cheeky back in 2006. I had an empty room. I got a budget of £10,000, which I thought I couldn't believe. And I bought a class set of Nintendo DS, and I bought a number of PS2s at the time, and then I bought the Wii when it came out, etc. And a whiteboard, and I had them all hooked up to this. And I used that as the kind of Trojan horse to get game-based learning into the firmament of Scottish schools and all the local authorities. And we used to invite all the educational partners there, and they would test all the games, etc. But I then had my ideas about which games I wanted to use to try and get case studies happening. Unfortunately, over the way things happened when LTS was merged with the Inspectorate and formed Education Scotland, we were moved out of our premises, and with kind of a bit of rationalisation, I lost my team, I lost the space, and we kind of lost a little bit of the emphasis on the Consolarium space. But I then created a virtual community in our national intranet, which is called Glow, and I called it CPD Consolarium. And what happened, it comes off our national learning communities. This is all linked to the Donaldson Review. So we're really trying to Teaching Scotland's Future, and we're really looking to try and create online communities where people of a like mind or of an interest can join these communities and collaborate in a collegiate fashion. So I've got the Consolarium community. And in it, I've got a thing called Get Game Gear Here, right? Because I've got a cupboard absolutely packed with materials that teachers can use, digital materials. So you go to the inventory and you have a search for what you want. So this teacher wanted the Moshi Monsters games, because I've got the Moshi Monsters games for the DS. So they look to see if it's available in one of the 4 periods that I loan them out over the school year. Then they look to see if there's a Nintendo DS set available, so a class set of DSs. And so they put in a bid. So when they put in a bid to me, they've got to explain to me what they think the perceived impact on learning is going to be. They've got to tell me where it's going to address curricular objectives. They've got to then talk to me about how they think it's going to impact on their professional practice. Because I don't just want to give them it to use at the end of golden time. That's a serious, serious learning kit. You know, and it's about, tell me what you're going to do with it. So then they get a wiki page with which they've then got to respond to me and the rest of the community and share their experience and their practice in the use of these tools. So this one, Moshi Monsters, Moshling Zoo. Okay, so I'm going to continue that theme. This teacher from Aberdeenshire ordered it and embedded the world of the Moshi Monster into her primary one's class life for, it must have been about 10 weeks. And the bar of aspiration that was placed for these 5-year-old kids really was way up here. I mean, I'm seeing secondary schools still asking kids to download a digital photograph onto a PowerPoint slide. And these primary 1 kids were doing the most amazing things. And I'm going to stick up for the Nintendo DS. I know you don't hear much of it now, but I think it's got to be one of the best devices, the learning devices that I've seen in the past decade. Look at these kids here. They're all taking their photographs of their work. They were annotating it with a graffiti tool. They can record their thoughts in it. They can play the game. And all this stuff's going on, right? So you've got them drawing pictures of the different areas of the Moshi Monster world. Independently encouraged writing, so they're writing their signs to go open the door for the Katsuma. Shh, there's a Katsuma about because he gets angry, the Katsuma. Okay, it's like Pokemon in a way. They've all got different attributes. So this was all embedded into the life of learning of the class. And what they did was things like this. There's Taki Taki Island. That's where DJ Quack lives. Okay, the little duck that you saw earlier. So what the teacher did was they decided to create their own moshling hunt in their school grounds. So they went to Google Earth and they looked at their school in Google Earth. And then what they did was they then created their own little pictures of their own Moshi Monsters, and they created them as little animations, and they placed QR codes all over the school grounds, and then they had to go out with their GPS and with their phones that they had and to be able to scan the QR code to take them to this wiki that had their animations of their Moshi Monsters. So you look at this in primary 1, all appropriate expectation levels, all embedded into appropriate learning opportunities for these kids. And now, well, they also are they know the worlds that they inhabit really, really well. And there's a little video of a tutorial happening. And so the kids were making video tutorials also for each of their peers about how you find certain characters. So let's have a wee listen to this girl. Remember, she's 5. And just listen to how well she knows the world.
You go to the Consolarium, click on your item and find out lots of information, and then go to the map, click on that place, read it out, and then you go to that place and try and find your marshal. And when you do, you give it something you like.
So Katie, could you show me which category in the Monsterpedia your marshalling is?
My marshal.
You can see how science is introduced here as well, all these categories of the creatures and all the different attributes that they have.
He has red glasses and he's an orangey yellow.
You see my video? It's only gone a third of the way through. She's got another 2/3 of descriptions to go. So I'll move on from that, right? So there's their wiki, find the marshalling. Down the left-hand side there, they've got all the different categories of marshalling. So you can see that's kind of contemporary technologies, sharing technologies, and it's incumbent upon us as teachers to ensure that from the earliest stages, young people are in these worlds, manipulating them, controlling them, extending their skill sets, and so that they are more than prepared as they progress through school to kind of meet the needs of what the next Gen Report set is asking for. There's one of the wee beasties there. That's Bernie that you saw earlier, right? So you click on the beasties, and there's the beastie category there. Also, with the teacher then responded into my wiki for the professional practice aspect of it and started responding with her experiences. Okay. Right then. I'm asking that folks, there's 3 A's. I've been called it AAA learning, just the idea in the head. This is aspirational stuff, right? It really is raising the bar of aspiration for our learners. It's also the autonomy that's within these worlds. Young people are inhabiting these spaces independent of adult intervention all the time. They are attaining heights and levels from which we maybe don't appreciate how well they can do these things. And the kids use the word awesome. I think Joe said it earlier as well. They are saying things like that in schools where they're engaging with these contexts, that this was awesome, and it's not affected. It's kind of like their language, so to speak. And these are the 3 things I think I'm seeing. Right, a wee video here, right, in a second. But the bit I'm going to argue, folks, is that I think game-based learning is much, much, much more than game-based learning. Over the years when I've been working in this field, I used the term, and because it kind of identified what you were, it got you a bit of interest. But I think it's become a hindrance now, because I think we've plateaued to some extent, because the people who were willing to listen, the people who were prepared to take it on board, they've all kind of done that to some extent, but I think we've plateaued, and I now think it's a barrier to those who maybe don't want to play with games, or don't think the games world is for them. And so I think if we dropped the term and just talked about learning, because that's all we're doing, we're using contemporary culturally resonant resources that appeal to learners. And if we give it that kind of name, I think it detaches it from what it actually is. It's learning. It's good teachers using good tools to affect good teaching and learning. So from my perspective, same as moving image education, I think we need to stop using these terms to maybe show, aren't we new, aren't we funky? I think we should stop it, because now, in my opinion, I think it's become a hindrance rather than a help. Also, folks, I think I've mentioned quite a few times today this idea that young learners are achieving and learning and showing their ability to learn independent of adult intervention. And when I was a student, I was really into the D-schoolers, like John Holt, Ivan Illich, etc. And I remember that quote there, that school prepares for the alienating institutionalization of life by teaching the need to be taught. You know, and you see my experience as the teacher with the Nintendo thing. I had the kids stratified and my opinion of what they could and couldn't do. And then I got my eyes open when I saw them play in that world, and I saw how able they were. So I think we need to be aware of this, folks, that our learners are really capable, and I think we need to expect more of them. Like a wee video here is just an example. Right? This is my neighbour's son, and he's going to show me how and nobody's helped him here, but this was FIFA 10, so it was a couple of years back, right? And just have a wee listen to him, and I've got some things on the screen. You know, it's just to hammer home my point about the way in which young people use the mechanics in games also to help affect progress.
You go on the start menu or after, it has your rating here. I've had 2 goods. And I can just quit.
So this is like feedback for you?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
going to try some corner kicks.
Okay. Can you show me your player profile?
Yeah. I've got 2. Because on Battle for Glory, you do this other one because you do a different thing, but my main player profile's Jackal.
Right, okay.
Played 224, wins 170, goals 969, best streak 28, I've won 7 series.
Okay.
That's the best out of all the files.
I take it you're not online with this then? So you
I'm not, but I'm able to.
You're able to go online now, yeah?
I'm able to go online.
Would you like to be able to compare your skills against other people online?
Yeah, I've never done it though.
Okay.
The real reason that I videoed him was because he kept whopping me and his dad at the game, and I wanted to know how he got so good at it. But anyway, and I managed to get a bit better. Right, folks, and speaking to Matthew last night, I didn't intend to include this bit, but I've added it. I thought I'd share a bit about the experience that I did with a research piece. We looked at using a game called Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training. I don't know if any of you have read that paper. It was published in the British Journal of Educational Technology in 2010, the first paper, and the second one was 2011. But let's have a look at this, right? This is a P6 pupil, not a high flyer, but you know the maths bit in Dr. Kawashima. Let's see how fast he can do his 20 sums. I'm here with Dylan from Fraserburgh, South Park, and apparently he's red hot at times 20. On you go. "13. That's the fastest I've seen any school child do that. Is that your best time?
No.
No? What's your best time?
9.
9? You can hear my incredulity there. 9? Because the reason being is that because I went around schools doing Dr. Kawashima and playing like Guitar Hero on Expert, right, with the tweed suit on, trying to show that I was, look at me, woo! But with the Dr. Kawashima, my fastest time was 10 seconds. And I can't get below 10 seconds, and he's got 9. And when I asked him to show me his profile, he just showed me his profile, and there it was, 9 seconds. 9 seconds. He was better than me. Anyway, there he is, look, 9. Oh, anyway. Right, how did it all start? Right, okay. I brought the clamshell DS in 2006 when I was still worked at Dundee University, and I had this idea that because I played Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training, and first time I did it, the test, it gave me a brain age of 43. I'm 44 now, but at the time then I was 38, right? And I thought, wait a minute, I'm not having that. So I went at it and at it and at it. And then also had all the games that had the question marks, and I wanted to open them and see what they were. So I got completely hooked by that game mechanic, being a 38-year-old man. And once I took a wee bit of a step back from it and looked at it, I thought, well, you look at the maths in there, it's kind of level D, it's addition, subtraction up to 100. It's multiplication, division up to about 11 times table. That's about primary 6-ish level D-ish. Imagine if that's doing that to a 30-year-old man, what would it do to kids of that age, of that ability level? So that was how I got the idea. And we tried an initial small-scale study where I had one class set in a school in Dundee that had high indicators of free school meal allocation, so high indicators of social deprivation, etc. Because I came from that kind of context, and I kept seeing kids really able who maybe didn't make as much of their abilities as they maybe have, and I wanted to see how could we extend them and challenge them so that they improve. And so we did a really interesting small-scale study initially, which asked a lot of questions, and I was kindly given the funds to do a randomised control trial with much bigger numbers. And the interesting thing was, folks, when we did that, we got a ton of publicity, which was all positive. It was all positive. We didn't get one bad bit of publicity. unfortunately, when I was at the BBC, I was on the BBC breakfast couch on 2008, and they wheeled out a couple of folks to speak against what we'd done. And I turned up to the BBC and didn't even know that they were going to speak against me, but they'd managed to read all about the stuff that we had online, etc. So that was just a wee bit unfortunate. But that worked out really well, because what we were saying was good teachers use good tools to affect good teaching and learning, and this is a way in which we think we're starting to show use of contemporary technologies can impact favourably on young people's outcomes and young people's improvements. So that was really positive. So we proceeded, we ended up working with 4 local authorities. I managed to convince the inspectorate that this was something really positive, and they came on board with us. And we ended up with, actually we got 19 notes of interest from the local authorities that wanted to participate. And that was the sample size that we ended up with. There was the methodology employed, a randomised controlled trial, stratified randomised sample, and 2 conditions. In a lot of the schools that we worked in, and schools where there's maybe challenge socially in the area that the kids come from, there's a kind of a soft start between 9 and 9:30ish. And when I worked in the school, it was just to kind of let the kids ease into the day, and I thought we could use that time better, so that was when we did the Dr. Kawashima thing. First thing in the morning, they went in, handed out the DSs, put their headphones in, into their profile, and they were lost in it for the 30 minutes of that first thing in the morning. And they checked their brainage on a Friday afternoon and reported back to the teacher, who kept a table of the hopeful decrease in their brainage. Those measurements that we used, we were interested if there was any impact on self-concept with maths. So we used the Marsh SDQI, and the mental maths assessment that we created. It was like an old school 100 sums test. How fast can you do it? And we timed them at the pre-test and we timed them at the post-test. Right? And the things that we were finding were that there were statistically significant gains, and this one was in the mental maths accuracy. When we first did the test, you can see there's been the average score has rocketed there, but we saw it with kids who maybe weren't the higher attaining ones, because if you've got 88 to get to 94 is not a huge jump, or if you got 92 and you got 100, still great improvement. But we were seeing kids who scored 16 scoring 56, kids who'd scored 22 getting 70, and there was a huge jump. And they were going home asking the teacher for ready reckoners for their times tables, and they were studying themselves so that when they went back to do their brainage check, they could get that score down. So it was a kind of an extrinsic factor with getting their score down, but it was intrinsic. They weren't interested in beating their friend's score, they were interested in beating their own score. It was all about self-improvement. But the one that was brilliant, what was really amazing, was the time it took them to complete the test. I think the average time to begin with was just under 16 minutes there, and it dropped to, I think, 13.5 minutes. And you were seeing kids that took 25 minutes to complete it the first time, getting then 18 minutes. Kids that took 21 getting down to 12 minutes. Kids that took 60 minutes getting down to 6 minutes. Because the faster you performed in the game, the better your brainage was. And they were all learning little tricks about writing smaller, and they were sharing them like wildfire throughout the school. You know, they were doing all these little tricks that kids do when they're playing games. And it was all for the collective benefit. And this class, some of the classes we worked in, the kids talked about, the teachers talked about there being some difficulties with the social dynamic, but it had a real positive impact on how the kids work collectively and collegiately. So there we are, folks. Attitudes. We didn't find any significant change in either the group in relation to math self-concept and academic self-concept. And we thought about that, and well, we've thought about it quite a great deal. And we wondered whether it takes a lot more than a 9-week effort on a Nintendo DS to kind of change the way in which kids have been socialised into thinking about themselves as learners. And also, if we'd have done the test on the Nintendo DS, would that have changed? You know, it was kind of like back in the domain of the formal world of school, and maybe the way in which kids perceive what's expected of them. You know, that kind of the work that Margaret Donaldson did with children's minds, with the naughty Teddy, etc. Anyway. Other measures, folks. Analysis by 5 to 14, the less able children tended to improve more than the able. The speed of processing, as I said, the middle ability group really improved. For Dr. Kawashima at home, we didn't find any significant difference. And we found no difference with gender. We found improvements across the board for girls and boys. Okay? And significant gains. We worried, the control groups improved statistically as well. But we wanted them to know that they weren't up against anybody else, but I think the word got out that they were, and that kind of John Henry effect was they thought, well, okay, I don't have the DS, so I'm going to work extra hard. You know, so you imagine if they didn't know about this, the effects could have been even greater. And we think that because we did a randomised controlled trial, that that gives us a claim to say we can talk about the generalizability of the approach that we used. And so when we loan out Nintendo DSs through CPD Consolarium, I point in the direction of the methodology we employed rather than letting the kids just get onto it if they've finished their work. I think it's got to be thoughtfully embedded into the classroom practice of the teacher. Right, how am I doing for time? I'm going to talk about another research piece that got published last year in the Computers in the Schools Journal, and we're talking about, with the early years in the use of games, we think we're seeing what we're calling a signature pedagogy with commercial off-the-shelf games, particularly in the early years. And there's the paper there, right? So Professor David Miller from Dundee University is the lead writer on it, and I'm in there too, and Alison Hudson and Jill Shimmy from Dundee University. And the signature pedagogies comes from Schulman's work, and he's talking about it symbolising the values and hopes of the profession. Experiences of teaching and learning can influence the values and dispositions and characters of those who learn. And in short, they form the habits of the mind, habits of the heart, and the habits of the hand. And they come in 3 different levels, okay? There's the surface structure, the deep structure, and the implicit structure. And the surface structure, folks, as that relates to what's immediately visible, like the interactions which make up the teaching and learning. The deep structure refers to the set of assumptions or beliefs about the best way to impart knowledge or to create learning experiences. And the implicit structure is seen as having a moral dimension, a set of beliefs about the attitudes, values, and dispositions deemed important. If you go back to the Moshi Monsters one, that teacher's kind of implicit structure was about creating challenging aspirational contexts in which children helped drive the learning, and that they were presented with digital contexts that were purposeful and relevant and attainable so that they could thrive and grow in that kind of learning culture. So let's see how some of these have been impacting in some uses of COTS games. Nintendogs. I think Nintendogs is one of the best educational games in the past decade, and it wasn't built for education, it was built for entertainment. But for me, it's phenomenal. That's my favourite photograph since 2006, since I've been visiting schools. I turned up to see this school, the very first school that did the Nintendog stuff. By the way, the Nintendogs work that we did is now happening in Australia, right across England, New Zealand, in the Middle East, because of like the practice that we started. It's been really effective. But I turned up, and these kids are showing me their work. Look, there's their Nintendogs. You play Nintendogs, you know, you get at the end of it, you get your prizes, and you stand on the podium. So there's the podium there, and I've got that overexposed though, and there's our doggy diary. And every day the kids went to their doggy diary and they wrote about what had happened with their Nintendog. And so they didn't need to be asked about this. This was part of the work they did on the Nintendo DS in groups of 3, looking after their Nintendog. They then went and wrote about what they did that day and whether they'd won first prize at the obedience competition. Many of you have played Nintendogs. Right? Quite a few of you. Okay? You know what I mean then. There they are there, folks. Look. Primary 1, in their groups of 3, taking turns to share the DS, taking turns to look after and nurture and love their dog. Because if you don't take it for a walk and you don't take it, make sure it's washed, and then it reacts the way a normal dog would. Unhappy, it gets fleas, right? So you've got to then wash it and brush it as well. You look at the way they work together and learn together. You know, and we try to manage that and create up false scenarios to see how well they work as a group. They know how to do this. It's almost innate. Okay? So already in primary 1, these kids know that at school it's about doing my jobs and my work. You know, and that kind of fantastic intrinsic motivation, creative world. It's not quite school. She's got her arms folded. Oh, wee bit of a concern there. Right? So folks, the deep structure pedagogy there, right? What we're talking about here is a focus on active learning and social interaction. High expectations of learners, the individual autonomy is being nurtured and actively encouraged. Shared values, beliefs and practices, especially about the nature of learning and the needs of children, right? And an emphasis on intrinsic motivation. That case study, folks, is on the Education Scotland website. There's a number of blog posts about how we've used Nintendogs on the Consolarium blog. So if you want to find out more about that, then that's where to go, okay? You'll find out tons about that. Now then, also seen it elsewhere. There's a game called The Land of Me that you get for iPad, and it's kind of like, reminded me of the Moomins when I was a boy, the way the characters are, and so I was immediately drawn to it. And there's 3 characters, 6 chapters, and you go into this world, and the kids can then type in text into the into the game, and it then affects how the characters appear in the world. So it's a nice way to introduce the effect of text, right? It's for kind of like very young children. So what they did was, they again embedded it the way that Nintendogs was into the life of the class. They turned the classroom into the land of me in the 6 chapters. The 6 environments represented in the 6 chapters were all recreated in the classroom, so the kids were in the land of me. And so they wrote to the CEO, James Huggins, from Made in Me, and he came up to visit. And the kids were told that he was the king of the land of me, okay? And so the kids are going away to welcome the king of the land of me to their school in Isla, in Port Ellen Primary School, and the noises they're making is that they're being the animals in the land of me. Okay, so you can see how they're totally lost in this.
Oh!
Excellent. Right, Ross. Nice to meet you.
Come this weekend.
Oh.
What a lovely throne. I love your classroom.
I'll jump on, folks, but then they do a hip, hip, hooray, etc. But what we found here as well was that we're seeing parents and the wider learning community being involved in these kind of scenarios with the world of games. I think it was Nintendo in particular that changed the kind of folk devil attitude to games. The kind of moral panics that there were. We know we still get them, but they're far, far less than they were when I started doing this stuff in 2006. And I think when Nintendo, with the DS and the Wii, they brought the game console out of the bedroom and they brought them into the living room. And it became a shared family experience. So that's why I think parental attitudes in particular have changed to the idea of bringing games into the classroom. I think parents are willing to, are quite happy to see these things happening if it's used well. So this one here, parents were coming in every afternoon for a 3-week period to do shared writing activities with their kids, all linked to the Land of Me work. And they had Land of Me Explorer packs going home, and the kids then had to go out with their parents and take photographs and take notes in their shared notebook about the wildlife they saw in Isla. Parents absolutely loved it. Mario Kart as well, folks. We've done so much with the range of COTS games. I'm just trying to give you a little taster of the range of things that we've done. But look at these kids. They've all got their crowns on, because you get the crowns in Mario Kart if you win, right? So listen to them.
I'm here at Bargaran Primary School with some primary 2 children who have been using Mario Kart in their classroom. Is that correct, kids?
Yes.
Yes. Tell me, who likes to play Mario Kart?
Yes, I do.
You do. Why?
Because when you win, you always get a different character.
A different character?
Yes.
Who's your favourite character in the game?
Mario Kart.
And
Mario.
Is Mario your favourite character?
Yes.
Who else? Anybody else got a favourite character? Who's yours?
Peach.
You like?
I'm going to stop that there, right? But that's all online as well. And that wee guy you just seen there, he's a character as the video progresses. And they've just learned all about Italy. And they're telling me, because Mario's from Italy, right? And so that was the hook to find out about Italy. And I interviewed his mum and dad, and you can actually hear them online. And they were talking about the total change in attitude to school by him. And the fact that he couldn't wait to get to school. Could not wait to get to school to learn all about Mario and to play Mario Kart and to build the cars they were doing, to write about the characters, etc. Totally lost in that. And we had another parents thing happening. This was a parents' afternoon. There was hardly any room to breathe. There must have been about 50 parents and grannies and granddads turned up, looking at the range of work that had been happening, that came out of the context of Mario Kart. A relevant, culturally significant context for young people to situate themselves in. Again, this is all online if you want to follow up. I'll make sure Matthew gets these links. And next one, I loved the iPad augmented reality in the classroom. So we've had a number of iPads loaned out to schools all over Scotland, again for use in the early years. Same methodologies seem to be happening. The same signature pedagogy seems to be coming up here. And if you haven't seen the iPad, so the guy's doing this in mid-air with the little card. You can do it with the PS Move as well. And so they've just given the iPad a wash, and they've got an achievement there. And again, that iPad became central to the learning of that nursery class. And look at this, look. After all the fun and games and all the excitement of playing with the iPad, look what they do. Everybody needs to sleep. And so that nurturing culture from the earliest stages with Nintendogs and the iPad, look how he's just stroking that in midair, but the iPad's reacting to his touch. And now look, he turns over on his belly, because he's, oh yeah, he's liking that, look. And the kids are all, you can imagine with P1, now don't you be nasty, hitting the iPad. Right, the kids, they were all quiet, and when they got up, he was sleeping, they tiptoed away from the TV. Just to finish, folks, the kind of idea or the vision that I had for the work we were doing with the Consolarium was that all this work with COTS games, it's fantastic, it's lovely, it really provides enriching learning context that children, again, choose to situate themselves in. But I wanted to use that to then make that jump to children being the creators of digital content and digital artifacts and not just the consumers of them. And that's a mantra that we've been saying for years now within the team that we worked with. And it was really interesting that the Curriculum for Excellence, from level 2 onwards, which is middle to upper primary school, it's a stated expectation that children will build games. I actually think it should be at level 1. I think we need to plant that seed in the earliest stages with our children, that they can control the computer. Get the makey-makeys into classrooms where the children are hooking that up to the computer and making bananas in a keyboard. You know, you've seen makey-makey. If you haven't seen it, check it out, folks. It's an amazing thing. We need to be looking at things like the makey dolls and also introducing things such as Scratch and Kodu at the early stages, moving on to things like Game Maker, moving on to different tools, Unity, where we're looking at extending some kind of progression that allows us to raise the bar of expectation of kids in that domain. I'm going to show you a couple of examples just before I finish. If you raise the bar of expectation, folks, these children, they get there. If you place it in front of them, they can attain it. Here's a teacher who taught himself Scratch. He's working with me. His name's Carl Bars. If you follow him on Twitter, he's called @CarlBars. He's a quite inspirational figure. I'm working with his primary school just now, Newborough, and his kids are going to be leading a Scratch TV channel through Glow TV, our national intranet. And they're doing screen captures of how to do stuff in Scratch, and then they're going to hold fortnightly tutorials. They're doing this all themselves. So I'm trying to bypass teachers to some extent and go straight to learners so that we can try and build this community of practice with games. But here's one of the kids, and this isn't an exception. All the kids are making games like this. This kid was 11 years old, remember. And let's look at the game he's made.
Hi, Jerry. I want to show people the game that you've been working on. Kind of inspired by a particular computer game, Guitar Hero? Yeah. Yeah? But you've put a kind of a Scottish twist on this by making... Now, I'm looking at your scripts on the left-hand side of the screen. Looks really quite complex. How much of a challenge has this been for you to build?
Hard. Very hard.
Hard. Very hard, yeah. Has it taken you quite a bit of time?
Yeah. And help.
And help. How did you get help?
From the teacher.
From the teacher? From Mr. Bars? So how much of this do you think
What a
has been
teacher should do, eh?
I mainly got help from that script.
So which script is this?
The one that makes the things that come down to get the correct.
Right, can you show me the game working?
He's got 3 difficulty levels. It's all based on Tam O'Shanter, by the way. The kids were doing Tam O'Shanter and they had to build a game that was linked to the poem. So he's got the witch and the devil. If you nail the song, the witch dances and you get points. If you make a mistake, the devil dances and you lose points.
Okay, so you'll have one for easy and one for medium as well?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Can we see the game in action?
And he's randomised the sprites that fall down. So you learn all about randomisation as well.
Now this is kind of a Tam O'Shanter influence one as well. So they're falling randomly, and that's the new program.
It's a wee bit more than as I said earlier, downloading a photograph on a PowerPoint slide. And I think if you have looked at Scratch, you'll see the complexity in that. And if you unpick the mathematics that's in that, there is so much that these pupils have learned, and they've practically applied their mathematical knowledge in order to make that game work. We really need to be inhabiting this space much more than we have. We must inhabit this space. And lastly, folks, this wee video here, this was the winner of we had a national games design competition in 2010. Not just write the idea for a game, build it. And we had loads of entries, and this was the winner for the individual secondary prize. And it's just a splash screen, but this guy gets it, right? Look at this.
Hello, my name is Ryan Walker, and this is my story. In December 2004, I received a call from a man on behalf of the mythical Greek criminal organisation. He offered me employment as one of their agents. It didn't take me long to make up my mind. I joined. About a week later, a parcel arrived in the post. Inside was some money, a plane ticket to America, and an electrical earpiece. I wish I'd known what I was signing up for.
Folks, this is rich learning, the stuff that we're seeing here. We must be looking to these contexts to ensure that young people can achieve their talents, their heights of attainment, you know, and it's more than game-based learning. And I really, I'm stopping using the term really whenever I speak about things. I think it's a hindrance. I don't think it does justice to the richness of the learning that's happening within these contexts. Anyway, I think I'm just about up in my time there. So hopefully you found that of interest this morning and of use, and maybe there'll be time for questions after. Okay, and there's my contacts there, folks, if you need to see me. Okay, Education Scotland. I'm at Derek Robertson on Twitter. So thanks very much. Thank you.